Hey, what up guys? It's Jack and welcome back to another video. Oh man, this shit just keeps getting better and better. So let me start at the beginning over here. Last time I checked, it's the year 2023, and also last time I checked, I think it's safe to assume that the majority of people that play video games are on console, right? Is that correct? And if I remember correctly, a lot of people play on PC because of very specific things. PC is the most powerful platform you could play on. There's a lot more things you can do. There's a lot of more things that you can multitask with as compared to on console. Now, both console and PC have their positives and negatives and stuff, but for the most part, the PC has overall positive things. I would say if everything was optimized properly and if everything was aligned properly and if everything was working the way it should be, there are definitely way more positives on playing on PC than there are negatives. Okay, cool. Now that we've established that, it's just been announced, I believe earlier today, that Redfall on console is going to be playing at 30 frames per second. And I believe on PC it could go up to a maximum of 60. And then obviously later on, after the release date, they're going to have like a patch that will allow for 60 frames per second on console and hopefully more on PC. And this is a first-person shooter in the year 2023. Now, I don't know what in the world is going on at Microsoft, but what is up with everything in some way, shape, or form that Microsoft is doing in terms of first-party games being lackluster? And what I mean by this is, like, obviously everybody remembers what happened with Halo Infinite. Obviously, Halo Infinite released with an option to play at 120, and obviously you could do more on PC. Okay, that's great, but in terms of some basic things when it comes to Halo, that game was lacking tremendously. I think we can all agree to that. I think we can all admit to that. So my big question is, what in the world is going on with Microsoft? I mean, right now, Microsoft is about to acquire Activision Blizzard. Okay, they're about to acquire them. And if things keep happening like this, what's next? Call of Duty is going to be running at 30 frames per second on launch, and then later on something later or something else going on. It's like, I don't fully understand. And that's another thing too. Somebody could very well, and there's minimal communication. Like, developers are not saying as to why the game will be released at 30 frames per second. And the thing is, later on in the year, what do we got? We got Starfield that's coming too. That's already kind of been teased and hinted at that it's going to be running at 30, or how the director of the game absolutely loves things on 30 because he loves the visuals and stuff like that. Okay, cool. That's great. But when you're talking about a shooter, specifically a first-person shooter, frames are a game changer. It's actually one of the things, believe it or not, way back in the day when COD 4 came out, which was back in 2007, it's one of the things that made COD 4 what COD 4 is. Like, for people, even for back in the day, for people that were playing on PC, they would get either an Xbox or a PlayStation console and play Call of Duty because it was one of the first games, if not the first multiplayer shooter, that ran on 60 frames per second, which was a big deal. And that was in 2007, 16 years ago. And here we are in 2023, to where games are releasing and 60 frames per second is not the minimal, especially since a few years ago, pre-COVID times, that we had pretty much more and more games releasing at 60. Halo being one of those games, with like Halo 5, for instance, because Halo 4 back in the day in 2012 actually was at 30. So, and then obviously it got updated later on with the Master Chief Collection and all that other stuff. So, I mean, frames in a first-person shooter in 2023 are more important than they've ever been, and I believe 60 needs to be the new lower standard, especially when you got consoles that are, very capable of running at 120. Okay, so don't get me wrong, it's nice that we can do 1440p or 4K, but for a first-person shooter, I mean, it's, for me personally, I want the game to run smoother. Pretty much, I mentioned this before in previous videos. Every single game today, for the most part, looks good, right? I mean, it looks good than the last two previous generation games. Even games that don't look as good, right, or are not considered graphically good games, right? They look better than what games looked like on previous gen consoles, at least for the most part, right? And I think we've come to a certain level now with graphics and visuals. It's like we're fine, but for whatever reason, right now we are severely lacking in smoothness and with the frames. Okay, so the only, like, if you are not big on frames, or if you don't quite understand frames because you've only been playing on console or older hardware, that and you've only been playing games at 30 frames per second, it's kind of hard to understand where I'm coming from. But once you go to 60, you'll understand. And then especially if you go to 120 or higher, specifically 120, because once you get past like the 144 or whatnot, I mean, the difference is minute. But once you get to like that 120 point, it's like it's really hard to look back. I mean, you'll settle for 60 and you're like, okay, that's as low as I'll go. But to down to 30, I mean, if Redfall was not a first person shooter, this wouldn't have been as much of a big deal. But when it comes to being a first person shooter, this is absolutely a big deal. And chances are, even if you've been just playing on console, regardless of whether or not you've got the new stuff or the old stuff in terms of consoles, chances are, if you have either a PS4 or an Xbox One or one of the new series consoles or a PS5 or even a Nintendo Switch, for depending on the game that you're playing, chances are whatever game you're playing it at 60. So when you go back down to 30, you're gonna notice it. You're gonna notice it, and it's gonna look like, if you've been playing on 60 or higher for a while, it's gonna look like your game is kind of malfunctioning and it can't keep up with the movement that you're trying to input. The smoothness of the game is just as important, or dare I say it, even more important than graphics. And besides, how in the world are you gonna enjoy those graphics if it looks like you're getting frame drop? Like, seriously, because when you're used to playing at 60 or higher at a certain point, you go down to 30, it's gonna look like your game is kind of malfunctioning or whatnot, or that you're playing. It's not going to be an enjoyable experience. And again, for a shooter, it's smooth. I'm gonna say it now. Redfall needs to be delayed, dude. Redfall needs to be delayed until your maximum frame rate cap is at 60. Simple as that. PS4 can handle 60. Xbox One can handle 60. I mean, I know it's an exclusive, so let's just say Xbox One can handle 60. Come on. I mean, even back during the 360 days, with Call of Duty, for instance, right? It can handle 60. So why can't this game handle 60? I mean, what is going on with the development? What is going on down there with Microsoft? Is it a whole other case now where you have so many contractors that are basically on the development staff for only 1.5 years, and then after that their contract's up or whatnot, and you can't renew it or whatever the deal is, or you can't transfer over for them to become full time? Like, what is going on? You are, out of all the gaming companies, out of Sony, out of Nintendo, and then you guys are the ones that are the most financially capable. So why can't you make this kind of I mean, you're just about to spend what, $68 billion? About $68 billion to acquire Activision Blizzard? And if those games take a hit in terms of frame rate and stuff like that, oh man, that is going to be an absolute huge problem. Specifically with games coming forward after that. Like, all the games that have already been made, those have been made. Fine, you're fine on that part, cool. But if future Call of Duty development games get released and they have this kind of an issue to where the frame rate cap is going to be 30, oh man, I could just imagine the negative feedback you guys are going to have from that. That is absolutely positively unacceptable, and it's something that needs to be fixed ASAP. So right now, Redfall needs to be delayed. And if it gets released, the other thing I can hope for is that Starfield, right? That Starfield pays that good attention, and Microsoft pays that good attention to the kind of feedback that they'd be getting for the 30 frames from Redfall, that they would listen and they would delay that game until the minimum cap is 60. Simple as that. In my opinion, there is no excuse now. Simple as that. Again, I'm not a developer. I understand that if things are going wrong on the inside, it's partially not the developer's fault in terms of the ones that are sticking around. But you guys got to understand, man. I mean, I've already said it. It's 2023, and I've already laid out a few examples. Delayed Redfall and delay it now. Have it come out a few months later. It can still come out at the end of this year. You got to have first impressions are very important, and if you mess up those first impressions, Microsoft is going to continue to be the laughing stock of the gaming community. It's the rich boy that's not able to do anything. It's simple as that. Delay the game. And I'm sorry to make this kind of a negative video or whatnot, but it's true. It just needs to be delayed. So Let me know down in the comment section, guys. Is the 30 to 60 frames going to make a difference for you, or do you not care about that and all you care about is graphics? I mean, everything is subjective. I mean, you guys have your own tastes and stuff, and that's cool. Let me know down in the comment section. Let me see things from your perspective. I would like to hear some feedback down below. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.